Hi, I'm Bryce,
Hi, I'm Chris.
and this is AI Augmented. So, Chris, I'm not sure if you've heard, but OpenAI kind of released some stuff recently.
Really?
I'm trying to remember, was GPT 4.1 a thing when we talked last? I don't think so.
It wasn't, no. That came out on Monday,
Yeah, so
and then more
perhaps we
stuff came
can.
out on Wednesday. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so I
let's
think
go in
let's.
chronological order, shall we?
Yeah, let's build up to it. So 4.1. I mean, I'll just jump right into it. So we talked last time about how Gemini is the new king of coders.
Uh-huh.
Uh, it arguably how even though Claude 3.7 Sonnet has a better way of communicating with people, Gemini is really that skilled coder who's maybe not the best at communicating, but can actually produce higher quality code and is quite good on reasoning tasks. But at least from what I've seen, it got upstaged in terms of quality. It's quite high. Um, in terms of comparing it to Gemini, I think it's slightly better, but one of the biggest things is the speed is just so much faster because rather than it being a reasoning model, it is just a I'm trying to remember what's not a reasoning
Normal
normal, the usual garden variety LLMs.
garden variety trillion parameter model.
Exactly, just one of the basic ones. But that's at least my experience. And the exciting thing with this episode is we did absolutely zero discussion beforehand. So I want to hear what are your thoughts to what I've just said. I'm curious if you had the same
Mm.
experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're starting to really see different characteristics in the models now because it's not just like, okay, it's very good at coding, right? Let's get that out of the way,
Yeah.
right? But then so is Gemini, so is Claude. What's really, I think, significant about this is that they've really understood what developers need from models and they've kind of tailored it towards it. Now, if we go back track a little bit, you remember 4.5 came out and everyone was a little bit underwhelmed.
Yep.
But then they used that to train a new version of 4.0, which was kind of much better and much more efficient. And in essence, they also trained a new version which was specifically for coding, and that's what we're seeing in 4.1.
Yes.
So they kind of forked, if you like, off of the old 4.0 model, and this was very specifically trained on coding. Now, like I say, why I think this is really interesting because like the number one thing for me is instruction following. Right. There is such thing as being too smart for your own good, and I think to some extent both Gemini and Claude suffer from this in their top models because they do reason and they do overthink things. So quite often they'll do a task and they'll be like, "Oh, but really we should do this at the same time." And quite a lot of the time they don't have enough context to know whether that's the right thing to do or not, but they'll just get on and do it anyway. Yeah. So for me, one of the most important things about 4.1 is it's very good at instruction following. And if you tell it this is exactly what I want to do, don't do anything else, it will actually do that.
Yeah, I never really thought much about the phrase instruction following until I eventually realized that a lot of what I didn't like about the models generations or other models generations is just that it's it's not what I wanted, it's not what I asked for. Well, okay, I should be a little more precise. Not what I wanted and not what I asked for are two different things. Kind of the biggest takeaway from any of this stuff is communication is everything, that you got to specify to the model what you want. But yeah, I mean, it really is as if Gemini is like a product manager that can think higher level and see more, or what's the word, consider more details, and can still has technical understanding, technical ability, but is just better suited for basically the higher level tasks that require consideration and pondering, let's say, before coming back. Whereas GPT 4.1, like you said, it follows instructions. It does a good job at getting things done as you specified.
Yeah. And if you're not a vibe coder, which we're not,
Yeah.
yeah, we're doing agentic engineering, which is different, right? It's like we know what we want it to do, we just want it to do it. So I think for that use case, yeah, 4.1 is pretty incredible. It's interesting you make the Claude comparison because again, we talked about that kind of last week. Claude is very good at kind of understanding intent, and that's always been part of its advantage really. But I think 4.1 is very good at that as well. And when you combine that instruction following with the improvement in tool use, because again, this was another reason why most of like Cursor, Windsurf, etc tailored their products around Claude was because it's so much better at tool use. And
Yeah.
obviously, if you're doing lots and lots of tool calls, it gets very annoying when it's getting half of them wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have you had much chance to play with 4.1 yourself? Or...
To be honest, I actually haven't done that much. Interestingly, this week, a lot of my work has been putting out fires and more focused on the reporting and communication type things rather than actually generating a whole lot of code. So I'm afraid I've actually not had much time to play with the new toys that OpenAI has put out. But
Yeah, it sounds like we've had
yeah,
opposite weeks then. Because
yeah. So I think you have a lot more to say this week than I will.
I did a hackathon at the weekend, which unfortunately was before 4.1 came out, but I just carried that on into the week, and I
Unfortunate.
don't think I've done probably not less than 12 hours a day for the last week. So yeah,
Very
I've got
nice.
quite a lot of hours under my belt with 4.1.
Yeah,
So I think another thing like we need to flag up here, which is like super, super important, is that like it's not just like 4.1, but it's also like the mini and the nano models, right? I think that's the names, right? Because
so yeah.
it's OpenAI and their naming is appalling, right?
Yeah, I
Get
let
your
me
act together,
just
guys.
yeah, I mean, I remember just seeing many people complaining about, all right, OpenAI released O1, skipped O2, went to O3, now has O4, which we'll get into soon. Um,
Uh,
and then for GPT, they released GPT-4, GPT-4o, GPT 4.5, now going back to 4.1. And so now it's a game of especially try not to confuse 4.0 with O4. My personal suggestion is that they should just like have a model that, or they should just release like GPT 404, and it should be an April Fool's joke instead of releasing GPT 5.
yeah. So the thing with Mini is that like you seem to get like 90% of the performance, but it's 80% cheaper. Yeah.
Which is
So
pretty darn.
yeah, again, that's like really, really significant because if you're just looking for a workhorse to like chuck out code based on very specific instructions that you've given it, that's an amazing way to do it because it's very low cost, very efficient, very good, basically. And that was probably like the biggest surprise of the whole lot is that like, wow, they've really, really got good at efficiency. And I think, yeah, like efficiency is a new scaling law, really, isn't it?
There's a few things that are new scaling laws, I think.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But you only need to look at like token prices like over the last 2 years to see just how much efficiencies they've driven in the models. And that's not just commercial competition, that's genuinely efficiency gains, right?
Yeah, and I mean that's one of the nice things about as people continue to work on a technology is that not only will it become more effective at whatever, you can usually not only make something more effective, but also more efficient. You can do more cheaper.
Mm.
And I'm trying to remember the name of the law, some economic law that the cheaper something becomes, the more it gets used. And that,
Mhm.
when we see the price of things come down, the overall revenue for the companies that make them tends to go up because now it's more available and people find more use cases for it. And I think that LLMs are very much in that same category that we are very much seeing that as the price of tokens come down, the use of it goes way up, and that just gives more and
Y-
more incentive for companies to keep doing that and sort of keep going on that what's the word? The positive feedback.
It's interesting. Yeah, I know the law you mean. I can't remember it either. But the first time I ever heard about that was after DeepSeek, and then suddenly everyone was really
Wow,
into it.
huh?
They're like,
Yeah,
oh
suddenly,
yeah, yeah, well, it is a good thing after all. It is a good thing. Honestly, it's a good thing. So yeah, I think there's a few. I mean, if you step back from the actual performance of the model, I think there's a few very significant things here going on. First of all, it's a strategy at work where they're really trying to kind of wrestle back control of coding from Anthropic. Anthropic really did have a good hold on the coding market, which is interesting because clearly ChatGPT dominates the personal and business markets. And it was really just kind of coding which Anthropic had done a really good job of cornering. But clearly, with these releases and some of the new ones as well, they are very much kind of going for that market. And it kind of makes sense, really.
yeah,
We know that the biggest use case for AI is coding.
absolutely.
So, how can you be the leading AI lab and not be leading in coding? I think that's probably been a personal bugbear of Sam Altman for a little while now.
I
And they're
suspect
probably
so.
quite happy coming out of this week seeing everything that's happened. Yeah.
Yeah,
A couple of other bits before we move on. I know we've got a lot to talk about. So it confused a lot of people that it's API only, but I think it makes all the sense in the world, right? They're not targeting ChatGPT customers with this. Really, they're targeting, Windsurf, Cursor, all the other AI coding tools to try and tempt people back over to the dark side, right? That's
no,
kind of what
absolutely.
they're doing. And I think the mini models really kind of play into that because if you can get such incredible quality at such a low cost, then that opens up new business models for these other companies where they can possibly offer those for free and then try and get people to, upgrade to using the kind of premium models. So, more of a kind of freemium type model if you've got a coding tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other thing which is really important about this is the long context. Yeah. Because remember, this is the first models which OpenAI have ever released, which have like a 1 million context window.
I think I'm trying to remember, did they say 1 or 2 million? The official.
Yeah, it's 1 million at this point in
Okay,
time.
1 million.
Who knows by next Tuesday,
Yeah, it
but
is 1 million. Sorry, I'm probably thinking of the llama models, but yes, yeah, 1 million.
yeah, I think Gemini are coming out with two shortly. But I mean, yeah, the fact that you can have a super cheap model which can do 1 million tokens is kind of massive as well because it opens up so many more use cases. We've talked in the past about how I just chuck my entire code base into an LLM to ask questions, and that can be expensive. That can be like a couple of dollars for a single query on an expensive model. But like if you're able to do that like super cheap and with accuracy just for retrieval, then it kind of suddenly makes sense. And so what was probably most impressive about it is not just that it has the long context, that it can actually use it as well. They showed what they called the very boring graph, where basically it would find the needle in the haystack, regardless of where it was, without any blind spots, really. And because they're very good at like instruction following and like essentially multiple attention, and even if you're doing a long document and you're trying to pull out all various different things, it seems to be like very, very good at this. So yeah, in all respects, this is definitely like a workhorse model, which is going to get a lot of use.
Yeah, no, and I mean what you're saying about it, them specifically targeting people who are using LLMs to generate code, and this I completely agree. They already got me. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, as soon as I saw it available in Cursor, of course I switched to it and started using it.
Mm.
It is, or quickly, I don't want to spend too long on this because we have even more exciting things to talk about, but I do appreciate that with Cursor I can try out a lot of these LLMs without, paying specifically directly for the API usage. Obviously, I'm paying Cursor my monthly subscription fee to use their service, and then they pay the OpenAI bill. But
Thankfully.
there's something, it's almost like, it's like the psychology behind it is just like, oh yeah, of course I'll just try this out because it's all of my code, it's my usual work environment. It's just, but I get to try just this one little thing different.
Mm.
In a way, it's a very, what's the word? it's a way of trying out new models in the context that I care about really easily. And I mean, that's something I certainly appreciate. I think that's something that, something like Cursor, maybe Windsurf, has as an advantage that, to refer to something we've talked about a lot, we're in a time where the more that you benefit from the advancements of LLMs, the better off you are, because the one thing we can count on is LLMs getting better. And I think Cursor, Windsurf, the AI-powered coding IDEs have put themselves in a great spot for that.
Yeah, definitely. Also, there's no friction to move from one model to another. There's no friction, and I'm just glad I'm not an AI lab making models because there's just like no business security, right? You imagine
Yeah.
like Gemini, right? The new one, they've been working on it for like years, and they're like, finally, we take the throne, and
And
then
like a couple of days later.
like, and it's got exactly, it's insane. It really is.
Yeah, no, it's just it's like I feel like it's on average every few weeks it changes. But, enough of that. We've got exciting things to talk about. So we briefly mentioned O4 as well as O3. So the news is that no longer O3 Mini, but O3 itself is available to us non OpenAI employees, people who are the
Also
actual
known as
customers
mere
using the.
mortals.
I was debating that, but I'm like, I don't want to give too much to OpenAI. I mean, like, they do good work, but I still have we'll leave my personal opinions on that outside of this for now. But anywho, they released O3, O4 Mini, and O4 Mini High through the web interface. I'll be honest, Chris, I'm sure you have way more experience using these than I do by now because, like I said, this week was kind of a mess for me.
Hmm.
So why don't you hit us with like what are your reactions? What are your thoughts? Tell us about this exciting stuff.
Well, I think we all knew that O3 was going to be good, and it's good. I think there is a lot that we weren't expecting, and probably O4 Mini is one of them. The fact that they've, like, even though they hadn't released O3, they had O4 as well. Uh, That's quite phenomenal, the pace of change, really. And again, it all falls really into the paradigm that I thought it would once we started scaling post-training in this way with the kind of reinforcement learning, is that if you do a bunch of post-training yourself, then like you're paying a bunch of money. You're basically burning your cash in order to make your model better. But as soon as you start offering inference on those models, then someone else is paying you to train your own models. Because all of those reasons, like the reason they're not going to share that with anyone is that is the most valuable data in the world right now. Because high quality data exists on the internet if you can filter it in the right ways. High quality reasoning data exists in very, very low quality. Most of the highest quality reasoning data right now is being generated by, like O1, O3 Mini and these kind of models. So I think what we're seeing from the very rapid advancements in these reasoning models is OpenAI's advantage is that they are generating more data and more data as they offer inference on these models. And even without huge kind of structural changes or improvements to the models, just scaling that training up is like having a massive impact, right? So it feels like we're very, very early on the scaling curve for that.
So I guess, are you specifically talking about using one model to generate data for the next model, or you're saying like using the user data? Like basically the data that we users of OpenAI are generating for them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because those thinking traces, right, which you can't actually see, they hide them.
Yeah,
They might give you a summary, but it's probably not accurate in any way, shape, or form. Like that is their gold dust, right? And it's why DeepSeek will always struggle to scale up in the same way that OpenAI does on the reasoning, because they're an open
yeah,
source model. Yeah, they might be able to capture those kind of traces from their own inference, but like most people don't use their APIs. They use
yeah.
self-hosted, they use Grok, they use wherever else they want to kind of run it from. Yeah, and there's no central collection mechanism for that reasoning data.
Yeah, no,
So
absolutely.
we'll see. We'll see if the other reasoning models can kind of catch up, or whether like this is OpenAI about to kind of take off on this front.
Yeah,
But yeah, there's lots of stuff to talk out here, and very little time to get through it. So speaking about the reasoning process, then, so one of the biggest differences with well, these models, plural, is that they actually use tools as part of the reasoning process,
yeah,
and that's something we've not had before. And I always give the analogy in business when we're talking about like LLMs of like a really good business advisor, right? If you've got someone who's really knowledgeable, they're very valuable. And if you have a phone call from them, you can get a lot of value out of it, right? If you have a phone call with them and they go, yeah, cool, let me think about it, I'll get back to you tomorrow. And they have a think and then they come back to you with their best answer, it's probably even better. But if they come back to you tomorrow having like searched the internet, done a bunch of research, maybe created some graphs and models around it to try and see how they can pull it around, then clearly the quality of response you're going to get from them is going to be a lot higher, right? And it's
absolutely.
exactly the same with this, right? If you're able to do all kinds of different things, my understanding is in ChatGPT at least they can use pretty much all the tools as part of reasoning.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we've talked for a long time, and it's kind of maybe it's common knowledge by now that the difference between was it a brain in a box or a brain in a jar? I'm trying to remember the analogy versus actually interacting with the world is
Mm.
if you have a really smart brain that just sits in a box, it can think, it's very good at thinking, like you said, but as soon as you give it a way to interact with the outside world, namely through tool use, suddenly then you have something that is truly more of an agent that can interact with the world, that can go beyond its own limitations, that is less limited by its own awareness and its own knowledge anyways, and is more limited by what things it can access in the world. And that's just, we keep seeing that over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I think that also makes a very important point is that the lines are starting to blur now between models and products/systems, right? Because really, if you look at O3 and O4 Mini as they are in ChatGPT, they're not really models anymore. They're more agentic systems, right? Because it's not
Yeah,
just about the LLM at the core. It's all this scaffold around it with the tools and everything else that it can do. And we've seen for a while just how good deep research is, and we knew, yeah, part of it's got O3 at the core, but also it's a very well designed agentic system. And
yeah,
that's, as we know, it's the year of the agent, as declared by
yeah,
everyone. And I think as the year goes on, we're going to have more and more understanding of what that actually means and where the real utility starts to come from. Where in the past, people maybe haven't quite got it. They've been like, it's useful, but if I don't have direct use cases in my job, then yeah, I don't know. Maybe AI is not for me. I think as soon
yeah,
as you start to see proper agents which can do stuff for you, even if it's, helping you sort through your email inbox or, booking a restaurant or these kind of everyday tasks which you do, I think then it's going to start clicking for people that like actually there's kind of a lot of utility about to be unlocked here.
yeah. I mean, I think we could talk at length about the economic implications, the societal implications, but I mean to really stay focused on this stuff, yeah, we're seeing something that we've kind of thought about and talked about and expected for a while, which is the value that agents bring is that what's the word? I'm trying to think how to most effectively communicate this, especially for anyone who might be watching who either hasn't thought too much about these implications of AI agents or has heard the buzzword so often that they're just sick of it and are ready to write it off as another like AI slop word to get the tech bros a bunch of
And
VC
I'm
funding.
pretty much in that camp at this point. I'm just fed up with the word
Yeah,
agent.
yeah. I mean really to put it succinctly, if you think about really who on the planet is best at earning money, it's people. Why people? Well, because, animals aren't great at thinking through things, following tasks, getting things done, that other people who or organizations who have money and have problems that they want solved, actually getting those things done. Computers, pre-AI computers, are great at keeping track of information, doing repetitive and relatively simple, very well-defined procedures or changes to those to that information. But really the value that's added a lot of the time with people who work information jobs, let's say, is that they can perform complex tasks to solve difficult problems that real people and real companies have that they want solved. And the thing about AI agents is that this is the first time in the history of the world that we have something else besides humans who can do this type of task, who can do these types of complex tasks to solve complex problems that real people and real companies want solved. Like if I could, I'm trying to really impress upon people that this is this is different than very fast computers that we've had before, than very good databases that we've had before. This is a tool that can solve problems that normally we would hire a person with probably a college degree or at least years of experience to think through and solve for us. And so I really I don't think I can impress upon people enough how fundamentally different it is when our machines can think, when our machines can consider complex pieces of information, when our machines can solve problems in the way that humans can. So, yeah, basically, if you've been thinking that agents are just another buzzword, this would be a great time to go really try giving some of them a hard problem. Obviously, you need to define it because, like I touched on earlier, communication is everything, but really, if there's one thing to leave you with, it's do not sleep on agents.
Nice. Yeah. Wow. I didn't know we were going to go deep, Bryce. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw we're getting close to the end of time, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna just leave a takeaway for today, and we'll see how that
Oh,
goes.
sweet. Hey, I've still got about 10 things to talk about. I best hurry up. Yeah, I think like for me, like there's no kind of economic planning around this is the biggest thing. Right, our entire economy is based on the value of human labor, right? And if the labor value of human labor is about to diminish significantly because we've got a cheaper, faster, more efficient way of doing a lot of the tasks which we're currently paid for, that's gonna create a lot of disruption,
Yeah,
right? A lot of disruption. So yeah, we are running out of time. So should I go for a quick fire round then? Yeah.
yeah. I'll tell you what, we'll do the quick fire round. Go 10, 30 seconds per topic. Go.
30 seconds. Okay, cool. Well, first of all, big surprise just how good O4 Mini is, right? So on a lot of the coding benchmarks, it either equals O3 or is kind of even better. Now, like, I know that's kind of what they always go for. The next generation's mini should match the previous generation's, standard model. But like this is like actually really impressive. And the fact that even the mini version of the new one is outperforming the state of the art model. Yeah, this is a mini version and it's outperforming Gemini and Sonnet, which we were just talking about last week as being
Yep.
the best models in the world. That is really phenomenal. Okay, that's quick for one. Right, next one. It's cheap. It's so
Yeah.
cheap. Yeah, it's so cheap when you think about the performance level compared to like what you actually get from it, right? It's it kind of in some ways it makes 4.1 redundant, but also doesn't. A lot of the use cases for 4.1 are in the IDEs where you want a quick response or you just want to do something and kind of implement it. But like actually, I don't know if you did the math, but like it's 20% of the cost of 4.1 O4 Mini, 20% of
I
the
actually
cost.
didn't. I'm gonna check again right as we're talking because
Hey, check
I
my
did
maths,
not.
but like that is quite incredible.
I'm on their website. Let's see. It looks like it's closer to like half rather than
Okay.
20%.
Okay, that's useful to know.
The like 40 mini is $1.10 for a million input and $4.40 for a million output.
Mm-hmm.
4.1 is $2 for input for a million input
And
and
eight
$8 for
out.
a million
Yeah.
output.
Okay, cool. So it's nearly
But
half.
still, like, that's nothing to scoff at. The fact that the new state-of-the-art mini model is around half the cost of 4.1 is significant.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane, isn't it? But like again, it brings back to quick fire point number three. Yeah, efficiency, right? It's all about efficiency right now. Yeah, and I don't know if you saw the Sam Altman interview on TED. They let slip that Sam Altman had said backstage that they'd had to double the capacity in a month. Double.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
What with like Studio Ghibli and Barbie kind of going viral, like it's just like their capacity just went through the roof, right?
yeah,
And so part of their strategy for dealing with that was to actually get these newer, more efficient models out. Yeah. And that actually helps them massively, right? I mean, the fact that they instantly deprecated all the old models in ChatGPT tells you all you need to know about it, right? They were not
yeah,
going to let like O1 run anymore, and O3 mini, like I'm sure O4 mini is a lot more efficient as well. It's a lot better. So like,
yeah.
yeah, incredibly efficient models that will undoubtedly continue and, hopefully allow them to keep releasing stuff because I'm still waiting for O3 Pro. I mean, you can never keep me happy. We've had all that stuff in a week, but I think O3 Pro is going to be pretty impressive. So next
It's
quick
every
fire.
week or so.
It is. It is. So yeah, nearly at the end. Two more. Promise will be quick. Uh,
So go for it.
Right, so interesting. So the O3, if you read the small print, they kind of mentioned it briefly on the announcement, but it's not really the same O3, which they announced in December, which had reached, what, 175 on code benches and stuff like that. They've done a lot of work to make it more efficient in order to actually be able to afford to offer it to people. So the probability is that it only really achieves like 80-90% of the performance of the original one. But for most intents and purposes, it's a very, I mean, like it's the best model in the world, what we say. It's a very good model
Yeah.
nonetheless, but you can only imagine what it would have been like if they hadn't nerfed it, right? So the final one was just one I kind of realized earlier today, actually, is that like quite frankly, the OpenAI search has always been a bit rubbish because it just goes off and gets the first couple of results and just uses that as the kind of point of truth, which isn't really very useful. Now, what's changed, particularly O4 Mini as a kind of search engine, like because those tools are built into the reasoning process, it's like it's now more like deep research light, which is probably
Mhm.
what OpenAI would call it because they've got such a naming problem. But like you can see what it does and it'll like go and it'll browse a couple of websites. They'll be like, this isn't very clear. I'm probably searching for the wrong thing. Let me try searching for this instead. Or it can do the picking up the thread thing, which it does with deep research. Like, oh, this is interesting. I hadn't considered this. Let's go and find out a little bit more to see if this is a good path. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So on average now you're probably getting like 10 or 12 different websites which it'll search, and it's really good at kind of synthesizing that into something useful. Like even like 2 or 3 months ago, one of the tests I used to do was like, hey, like here's a list of 10 models, go and give me the API prices for it, right?
Mhm.
And without doubt, everyone would get some of them wrong, right? Now, like I've tried those kind of things like a bunch of times with O4 Mini and search on, and not once has it got anything wrong.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's not just it's not just the reasoning and everything else. It's like your normal day-to-day stuff gets a lot better as a result. Yeah, I think if I was Perplexity, I'd be worried because when like I used Perplexity for a bit and then it wasn't like I said, I don't think ChatGPT search was very good, but it wasn't quite a big enough performance gap for it to be worth paying for Perplexity as well. I already spend enough money with across all my subscriptions.
Yeah, we're kind of getting to the saturation point with these AI subscriptions.
Exactly. And now, I mean, I would say the results are probably way better than what I get from Perplexity, although I'm sure they've been working on it in the meantime.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna bring that up as the next point of what does this mean for Perplexity, and I'm assuming there are other AI search engines, but I don't know
Hmm.
of any besides Perplexity, because I mean it's just been so useful I haven't needed. But it's starting to sound like, how do I put it? We've known for a while that building too close to the model is dangerous because OpenAI, of course, and all the model providers, they started with building better models, but it's a pretty clear next step to build tools for those models to use, ways to enhance and augment those models. I think that Perplexity might, personally, I didn't think they were too close. I thought, okay, they're in a fine space to be developing what they're doing, but I'm starting to think that they're kind of flying too close to the sun. They're getting kind of into the danger zone. Especially what I will say is with, O 04, as soon as OpenAI releases O 04, and as soon as they bring down the cost of deep research, I'd be very worried for Perplexity. I think Perplexity's best bet, I mean, besides obviously innovating and creating something that I can't think of, which I'm sure they can do, as long as deep research remains expensive, Perplexity's got, some wiggle room, but we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be. I feel like they're getting crushed between the weight of Google and OpenAI, and that's not that
Yeah,
that doesn't seem like a very pleasant sensation to me.
being crushed between I would argue the two largest AI giants in the world.
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much. So there we go. On that wonderful, colourful metaphor, we should wrap up.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, glad to hear your perspectives on this, and I hope everyone watching has gotten something useful out of this. Yeah. Please let us know too if there's anything that we said that you disagree with. We're always happy to hear new thoughts, new opinions. And just generally let us know if there's any comments you got. All right, and on that, I'll see y'all next time.